Today I want to be talking about a new chart that I just found that shows that 31% of Bitcoin is actually held by governments, ETFs, and MicroStrategy, because it kind of raises a question that a lot of people have been wondering for a while. A lot of people think that the ETFs are a centralization risk for Bitcoin. And it really reminded me, this chart did, of an old interview from a billionaire, Peter Thiel, who had some pretty interesting things to say about Bitcoin and the ETFs co-opting Bitcoin. So today we're going to be talking about, are the ETFs good or bad for Bitcoin? And can we expect the ETFs and MicroStrategy and a lot of these other billionaires to continue aggressively accumulating Bitcoin? And I want to look at how much supply they could get their hands on. Because again, this chart that I was showing you guys, it's been sent to me by a few people who are a little bit concerned. Let's start with this video here.
Maybe Larry Fink with the BlackRock ETF surrendered to the forces, the anti-ESG forces, or maybe it's more like Bitcoin's been co-opted by them, and I worry it was more the latter.
So billionaire Peter Thiel believes that Bitcoin's being co-opted by the Bitcoin ETFs. Again, I don't want to make any inflammatory statements. I'm going to play you guys the whole video so you get the context, but that kind of sets up what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this chart. I want to discuss, has the ETFs, are they actually co-opting Bitcoin? Is it a risk that they hold so much Bitcoin? We can see the change here in this chart between 2023 and 2024 is what's most interesting to a lot of people. That big sliver of yellow is showing that these ETFs are buying more and more Bitcoin at an accelerated rate. So again, I'm going to play you this whole video before we really dive into talking about everything I want to talk about in today's video. Let's give you guys all of the context.
Are you still convinced?
I think it's gotten partially unlocked with the Bitcoin ETF. But then there, probably the part where I'm less convinced of is this question of the sort of ideological founding vision of Bitcoin or these cryptocurrencies as sort of a cypherpunk, crypto anarchist, libertarian, anti-centralized government thing. This is always the line.
Isn't that what got you interested in the first place?
That's what I thought was terrific about it. And then the question is, does it really work that way, or has that thread somehow gotten lost? And so when people in the FBI tell me that they'd much rather have criminals use Bitcoin than $100 bills, it suggests that maybe it's not quite working the way it was supposed to.
Have you sold any of your Bitcoin?
I still hold some. There are all these ways I didn't buy as much as I should have, and I'm not sure it's going to go up that dramatically from here.
From here?
Yeah, I think we got the ETF edition, and I don't know who else buys it quickly from here.
Some interesting investment advice. That actually surprised me, because I don't think I've heard you. I thought you were still all in.
I still have a small position. It probably still can go up some, but it's going to be a volatile, bumpy ride. And I had a dual reason. One was this sort of ideological, decentralized future of computing world that I really do believe in, really believe would be better. And it seemed like the perfect vehicle for that for such a long time. And I am just much less convinced of that. And so
interesting.
So maybe Larry Fink with the BlackRock ETF surrendered to the forces, the anti-ESG forces, or maybe it's more like Bitcoin's been co-opted by them, and I worry it was more the latter.
So this is an interview that's a couple of months old now, and I think there's two big scenarios that billionaire Peter Thiel mentioned. Number one, maybe Larry Fink has, surrendered to the anti-ESG forces. Maybe he's realized that Bitcoin is actually a great idea and ESG was a terrible idea. Again, it was Uncle Larry Fink who was, perpetuating this idea of ESG all over the world between 2021, 2022, and he eventually came to the realization that ESG is a scam. So Peter Thiel said, look, scenario number one, maybe Larry Fink gets it. Maybe he understands ESG was a scam and Bitcoin is a great idea. Number two, which he said was more likely, was that Uncle Larry and the ETFs are co-opting Bitcoin. So I want to discuss this today because a lot of people have asked me, a lot of people constantly say, Luke, you're pumping the price of Bitcoin. Yeah, it's great the ETFs are buying Bitcoin, but this is only number go up. This is actually not helping freedom go up. So I wanted to quickly go through a couple of charts today and kind of discuss where I think things could go wrong or things could be a little bit risky for Bitcoin. So I want to show you guys this chart here. This is showing us the biggest holders of Bitcoin. So in the orange, that is the Giga Chad's Bitcoin stack. He right now has 424,000 Bitcoin, holding around 2% of the supply. And then this interesting shade of blue, this big blue bar, is actually showing us how much Bitcoin is held by IBIT. So this is the bar that our good friend Peter Thiel is a little bit concerned about. This is representing BlackRock. So BlackRock has 527,000 Bitcoin at the time of this live stream. That's over 2% of the total supply of Bitcoin. And we can also see a lot of these other bigger ETFs also are squatting on a lot of Bitcoin. Fidelity, 1% of the supply, 204,000 Bitcoin. GBDC, 212,000 Bitcoin. They're also squatting on around 1% of the supply. So when you start adding up how much Bitcoin is actually held by these Bitcoin ETFs, we're all of a sudden looking at them holding about 5% of the total Bitcoin supply. It's a lot. Some people have said, Luke, where's the upper limit? What if the ETFs hold 60% of the supply or 50% of the supply? And then Larry Fink introduces something like a controversial hard fork in Bitcoin. He says, yeah, you know what? Maybe my ESG idea of circa 2022, 2023 was actually a good idea. And yeah, you know what? Maybe Bitcoin does use a lot of energy. I'm going to change my stance on what I've been saying publicly about Bitcoin over the past 2 years where I've been bullish. And I want to create a green fork of Bitcoin. I want to create a proof of stake version of Bitcoin. Again, these are just hypothetical scenarios, but these are the scenarios that a lot of people ask me about. And they say, Luke, where is a safe amount of Bitcoin for BlackRock to hold? Is there an amount of Bitcoin that concerns you that would be in the coffers of yours truly, Uncle Larry Fink? Well, there is. I wouldn't like to see 50% of the Bitcoin in the ETFs for a multitude of reasons. I mean, that would obviously be a pretty big centralization risk. If we got 50% of the Bitcoin in these ETFs, I wouldn't like to see that. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I really wouldn't like to see that at all. Okay. Do I think it's likely to happen? Well, let's have a look. How much Bitcoin can be bought by these Bitcoin ETFs? Again, I'm going to go to a fan favorite. Well, it's a Luke favorite. This is the chart that I love so much. This is looking at the number of Bitcoin on exchanges. This is actually showing us the percentage of Bitcoin circulating supply that is on the exchanges. And you guys can see by this number, there's not a ton of Bitcoin on the exchanges right now. We're approaching that 10% level. If we see a very updated version of this chart, indicating that there is somewhere around 2 to 2.5 million Bitcoin sitting on exchanges. And that is because I believe we are in fundamentally a different era for Bitcoin. You can see very clearly something completely changed in 2020. Coins started leaving the exchanges for the first time in Bitcoin's entire life. And what that suggests is that if this trend continues, it could be awfully difficult for someone like Larry Fink or the ETFs to sit on 5 or 10 million Bitcoin, because there's only 2 to 2.5 million left on exchanges. We just showed you the ETFs hold around 1 million collectively. So again, I don't think it's likely that the ETFs are going to be able to get their hands on more than 3 million Bitcoin. So again, even if we assume there's 2.5 million on exchanges, let's not forget that right now, Michael Saylor is aggressively buying Bitcoin. Aggressively. Well, there's a lot of other public companies like Marathon and Riot also raising $500 million and $1 billion worth of debt with these convertible notes, going out there and also buying tens of thousands of coins themselves. So is it likely that the ETFs can get to 20 to 30%? I don't think it's likely that the ETFs can get 20% of the Bitcoin, like 4 million coins. I don't think it's likely. I think we have entered this era where we're beginning to see nation state accumulation of Bitcoin happening. Now, yes, when you look at little visualizations like this, it is very clear that the ETF race is becoming more and more centralized, because we can see here BlackRock, the bar at the very top of this little visualization, is kind of pulling away from its competitors. So yes, the ETFs are continuing to be very, very successful, but a lot of this money is going into the hands solely of BlackRock. Okay, so this has some people worried. We can see here, this little graphic here also shows the complete and utter domination being led by BlackRock in the Bitcoin ETF space. They are the green portion of this chart, and it is absolutely undeniable that they are accumulating a lot of Bitcoin, and a lot of the flows are heading to IBIT. It has kind of turned into a little bit of a one-horse race. Fidelity here in the pink, a little bit more of an ideologically aligned Bitcoin ETF issuer. They also are squatting on significant amount of coins. Again, 1% of the supply. If we go back to this chart here, we can see that Fidelity is in red with 204,000 Bitcoin, or about 1% of the total holdings of Bitcoin. Now, again, a point that I think is pretty important to make here is that, yes, Bitcoin is a proof of work network. I can hear people screaming from the rooftops. It doesn't matter how much Bitcoin BlackRock holds. They don't have any increased influence or say over the network, because Bitcoin is not a proof of stake network. For those who might be new, it's very different to Ethereum. BlackRock can accumulate a lot of Ethereum and hold a lot of supply and hold a lot of stake in that network, and they can change the rules of the network because Ethereum is a proof of stake based system. Okay, but again, there are certain risks. We do not want 80 to 90% of the Bitcoin in the hands of BlackRock and for them to hold the economic majority of the transactions on the Bitcoin network in a hypothetical scenario of a hard fork. We would not want to see that. Things could get a little bit hairy. Don't get me wrong. Southern Bitcoin is in the chat, says Peter Thiel. Lost all my respect for him. He's the one that had rolled over and given up. Also even admitted he wasn't even smart to buy more. True, great point. And again, we're paying close attention to what Peter Thiel is saying, because let's not forget, it's the man who co-founded PayPal. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they're trying to create digital money for the internet before most people even thought of the idea. Okay, Bitcoin wasn't created until 2008. And there are speeches from the late 90s of Peter Thiel talking about trying to create a form of digital money that actually operates outside the banking system. And he even mentioned central banks from memory. So again, this is why I pay very close attention to what Peter Thiel says. I'm going to get back to Peter Thiel in a moment. We got a super chat from Will Jones. Thank you, my man. £4.99. Not sure taking FBI advice or interpreting their comments on what currency they prefer criminals use is good guidance for investment or indicators. I typically agree with you, Will. So in that video that Will's mentioning, Peter Thiel said, look, the FBI said they prefer criminals to use Bitcoin. And if I'm interpreting the video correctly, that's one of the reasons that Peter Thiel is a little bit less bullish on Bitcoin. He's saying, considering the FBI is saying that, turns me off Bitcoin a little bit. Okay, again, in the video that we played you guys at the beginning of today's, in the video we played, not that video, this video, again, if you guys tuned in late, rewind the stream and go check it out. There's 697 of you guys on Twitter and YouTube between the two platforms. So if you missed it, I'd encourage you to rewind and check out what Peter Thiel said. He did have some interesting words to say. But I think this new chart that I saw floating around on Twitter this week is an interesting one because it is showing the growing change we're seeing. It is showing that more and more Bitcoin is ending up in those slivers of orange and those slivers of yellow, representing governments and ETF funds. So Corridor makes an important point. BlackRock does hold the Bitcoin on behalf of its shareholders, but something that I believe the correctors don't quite understand is the fact BlackRock has already openly admitted that if there is hypothetically a hard fork in Bitcoin, BlackRock has no obligation to choose the most economic chain of Bitcoin, and the shareholders of the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, they don't get any vote over what Bitcoin they receive and what Bitcoin they want BlackRock to follow. BlackRock has made this disclosure buried on page 24 of their initial ETF filing way back in mid-2023. I can remember the page number because we've brought you this disclosure many times. Matthew J makes a great point. Makes an interesting point. I think the exchanges are being drained. I mean, we've seen a lot of selling from long-term holders locking in some profit here at $100,000 Bitcoin, which is what we see every bull run. Every bull run when Bitcoin gets above an all-time high, long-term holders naturally take a profit. And I mean, Michael Saylor, the ETFs, they have absolutely absorbed all of these coins. And typically in bull markets, it's actually very normal to see the coins on exchanges rise in bull markets. We're not seeing that this bull market. Back in 2017, back in 2013, we saw around 500,000 Bitcoin put on the exchanges. This bull run, we've seen 300,000 Bitcoin leave the exchanges, even if we accept the numbers that you gave us there, Matthew. Again, all exchanges measure it differently. But even if we accept that 300,000 Bitcoin have left the exchanges, that's still massive. It's very big. A lot of supply has been eaten up by these big whales. This time does look a little bit different. Again, if you are trusting BlackRock with your Bitcoin, I would always encourage you guys, do not trust BlackRock with your Bitcoin. Go out there, self-custody your Bitcoin. Okay, I mean, Bitcoin is a revolution, but you are not participating in that revolution if you don't hold your own keys. So I always encourage you guys to not only take custody of your Bitcoin keys, but back up those 12 or 24 Bitcoin backup words on something that's actually going to last the test of time. And that, of course, are these sexy little titanium plates that you guys can get from Stampseed. I'm actually back from, where would I go? Madrid. I was in Europe for a couple of weeks there. And I didn't take these puppies with me, but I'm back, baby. I'm back in Lima. As you can see, these are sturdy. Listen to this. That shit is strong, okay? This stuff is going to be able to actually protect your generational wealth for generations. So again, check out what Stampseed is doing. You guys can get a 15% discount off anything you want to buy from Stampseed with a promo code Luke15. I believe all of that is linked down below, so check that out. And while we're talking about sovereignty, while we're talking about financial sovereignty, again, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you guys, the time has come to start thinking about your health, okay? What good is Bitcoin if you're not looking after your health, okay? But there's a big problem with health and health insurance more specifically, and that is the fact that the industry is a scam. It's a racket, okay? That's why I've recently partnered up with a Bitcoin-backed health insurance company called Crowd Health. A lot of you guys would be familiar with Crowd Health, and they're going to offer you guys a big discount on your first 3 months with them if you use a promo code Green Candle, one word. So again, check out what Crowd Health is doing. Any Bitcoin-only company, I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of Bitcoiners, and I'm a fan of Bitcoiners trying to improve the world. So highly recommend you check out Crowd Health if you are in the market for health insurance. Now we got a lot of questions. Matthew again. If you add the 2.5 million Bitcoin on exchanges with the 2.9 million captured in corporate balance sheets, ETFs nations hold over 25% of Bitcoin, no longer free money. It's trapped securities. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I don't necessarily see Bitcoin as trapped security money. I think Bitcoin is still very decentralized, very sovereign. Anyone around the world can still transact Bitcoin, move Bitcoin anywhere around the world. The fact that 25% of Bitcoin is held by governments and ETFs doesn't stop my ability to send you Bitcoin. So many comments here, guys. It's crazy. Oh, shit. Guys, it's 7:40. I've got to get my late ass out of here. I actually have a massage, so I'm going to have to end this stream here. I think I answered most of our questions here. Again, pay close attention to what is going on. I think trends are interesting. Trends are important. I saw this breakdown between December 2023 and December 2024. I wanted to quickly make a video about it to show you guys where I'm concerned and what concerns me and what doesn't concern me around Bitcoin centralization. I do get asked about it a lot. A lot of people say, is Michael Saylor, are Larry Fink our friends? Who knows? Time is going to tell, and we're going to continue following this story. So thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. There's 800 of you guys tuned in between Twitter and YouTube on a Saturday night. Will Jones, thank you so much for the £5 super chat. I apologize if I was a little bit slow tonight. Don't know if you guys can tell or not, but I'm a little bit tired. I'm a little bit wrecked. I've had 16 hours of flights yesterday coming back from Madrid. So I'm a little bit short on sleep. If you can't tell, I look more tired than usual. So thank you to everyone for putting up with me today. And with all that said, you're going to see me in another live stream tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. I certainly am. And I'll see you guys in a stream tomorrow.